So one of the things that I'm also noticing that I think is good, you know how we talked about Scott Wiener and the sea change that's taking place? A lot of liberals who also leaned into the Republican insanity over immigration are now turning around and saying like ice, melt ice, all this stuff. They're getting more radical by the day, and that's a good thing.
You will pet me, whether you like it or not.
You know what I'm saying? More federal agents are heading to Minneapolis, which is, again, very strange, right? Because remember, the Department of Homeland Security is supposed to be tasked with dealing with migrants, right? Undocumented migrants, or at least that's on paper what they're supposed to be doing, okay? Having said that, however, it's very strange to me that they're utilizing the Department of Homeland Security in what seems to me is objectively not an immigration operation at all. It kind of feels like they're utilizing the Department of Homeland Security as an unaccountable fascist army that can be sent to the domestic front at the behest of the administration. And that's precisely what it is. That's why we say it is the Gestapo. Okay? And I want to clear some stuff up for people that are maybe unfamiliar. I did tweet about this. I tweeted quite a bit this past weekend. But for those of you who don't know, the Department of Homeland Security was actually created in 2003. Okay? The Department of Homeland Security has not been around since like the inception of the nation state or whatever, right? We've had Border Patrol and we've had Customs, okay, as separate entities, and we've had the INS, okay? Now, in 2003, in the aftermath of 9/11 and the global war on terror, right, post-2001, we created a major surveillance apparatus and created a new federal agency specifically to utilize a new group of people trained to do like mass surveillance and mass apprehension under the guise of like at least one element that was federally controlled, immigration, right? Controlled by the White House, immigration, so that the Bush administration at the time could take on whatever they wanted to and engage in mass surveillance of like Muslim communities, send them to Guantanamo Bay, things like that, right? ICE has no reason to exist. Something like the Customs and Border Patrol makes sense, but there's no reason to have an internal migrant hunting army. Law enforcement can deal with crime. Customs and Border Patrol can deal with the border. Exactly. And that's what it was. That's how it used to be. That's how it used to be until 2003. Okay, so when people say, "Oh, dude, what do you mean? Can we not have any borders? You can't have a nation without borders." It's like that's not the function of the Department of Homeland Security. You've just believed this lie. As I said, I love when people act like ICE has always been around, like we didn't have any border control before Department of Homeland Security was created in 2003. We had the INS, Customs Service, and Border Patrol before it all merged into an insane surveillance behemoth that is now Trump's personal Gestapo. Idiots. Okay, because that's what it was. It wasn't like open presence, thank you for the 100 gifted subs. It wasn't, the Department of Homeland Security's function was not to actually, protect American borders or anything. That was the reasoning and the justification that they used to develop this like mass surveillance and unaccountable military force that they can use in the domestic home front. That is the real reason why they did that. This is the Patriot Act. This is the aftermath of the Patriot Act, okay? So when people say like abolish ICE or abolish the Department of Homeland Security, this is what they're referencing. So I hope people understand. What is this? Well, since my post clearly inspired you. Yeah, I love these bot accounts. Yes, I learned about this from you, Gator Gar, Yala Gator Gar. Yes, this person is saying that the INS has been conducting deportation operations inside our borders for almost 100 years, okay? The stupidity of this, of course, is that the INS was tasked with dealing with a civil offense because that's what border crossing is. Okay? That's what it is. It's not this whole this is actually a felony, and perhaps the most violent felony of all time is a new phenomena. The notion that immigration is anything beyond a civil misdemeanor is, one, not even in the rule books, for the record, even though we have changed the rules a little bit to make it more a more severe crime. For example, if you're caught crossing the border illegally or overstaying your visa and you're deported, right, in a relatively peaceful process, for the record. This isn't like This isn't supposed, like this new version of like door knocking operations or dragnets, like that's not how it's supposed to go. But normally it's a process you can deal with paperwork, right? Because that's all this is. And it's been treated like that for a very long time. The notion that this is actually a severe felony, or all of these people are actually criminals and they're coming here to do rapes and drug trafficking and whatnot, that is a new attitude, or at least that's the old attitude that the Klan held, right? But it's a new attitude that has become, it's new in the sense that it's become normalized and mass adopted. Okay? That's the problem here. And that's the reason why I've also criticized the Democrats quite extensively for not doing enough to push back and counter message against this ridiculous racialized lies. These ridiculous racialized lies that undocumented migrants actually present an ever-present danger to the United States of America, or they're stealing the welfare, but they're also stealing the jobs. All of it is inconsistent and none of it is true, right? And yet, here we are.
This morning, furious protesters bracing for hundreds more federal agents to descend on Minnesota as outrage grows nationwide over the deadly ICE shooting in Minneapolis. Thousands taking to the streets in New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles. Protesters were demanding an independent investigation after disturbing cell phone videos showing ICE agent Jonathan Ross fatally shooting 37-year-old mother Renee Good last week. Over the weekend, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem doubling down on her position.
Democrats were behind many of the anti-immigrant movements in the 1900s, as early as back as the Reconstruction. Yes. Yeah. This is also true. Even in the not even the 1900s, in the early 1990s, up until the early 1990s, Republicans were Ronald Reagan did mass amnesty, guys. Republicans were way more open to migration into the United States of America. And it was actually the Democrats that did not want to do this, but only on the boundaries of protection of labor. Okay. And the argument there is the argument that I always tell you, which is that if there is a two-tier migration system into this country, and you have undocumented migrants, okay, and you have documented migrants, and you have the domestic labor force that already exists, this two-tier structure actually does depress wages. It's true. But the solution to that is not to engage in, it was Strong Thurmond. I can't tell if you, Strong Thurmond, that flipped the script of political axioms. Strong Thurmond is crazy, brother. That's a white supremacist, okay? Another white supremacist who also had a secret black child. Straight up KKK Klansman. God, American politics is a tapestry of some of the craziest, inconsistent freaks. Anyway, many such cases. Classic white men behavior. That's why it's like silly whenever someone goes, well, how can this person be racist? They like have a Filipino girlfriend or something. And it's like, well, because it's very common. All right.
That the shooting was justified, accusing the deceased woman of domestic terrorism and claiming she tried to run over the agent with her vehicle. But the video shows her turning away. Minnesota officials say DHS has blocked them from accessing any evidence for a state-level investigation.
If we're going to trust the federal government, how can we trust the federal government to do an objective, unbiased investigation without prejudice when at the beginning of that investigation they have already announced exactly what they saw, what they think happened.
ICE and Border Patrol agents stepping up operations in Minneapolis. Videos showing agents deploying pepper spray, smashing through the front door of this home and leading a man out in handcuffs.
And George, the federal response to this deadly ICE shooting has been met with a lot of criticism, especially among congressional Democrats who are now threatening to hold up DHS funding if there isn't a transparent investigation. George.
Faith Abubi, thanks.
Now to Minnesota, where there are new confrontations between protesters and immigration agents. This one happened at a gas station in St. Paul after ICE demanded proof of citizenship from a man pumping gas. Over the weekend, demonstrators took to the streets in multiple cities to protest the deadly encounter between an ICE agent and Minneapolis resident Renee Nicole Good. The government is sending more federal officers to the Twin Cities. Nicole Skanga has our story.
Immigration raids escalated across the Twin Cities Sunday, including at a St. Paul gas station where federal agents dragged a man from his car, then tackled a bystander who was filming. We were there as federal agents deployed pepper balls and tear gas against protesters outside an ICE facility.
Stay out of the road.
Led by Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bavino.
What do you say to Americans, including police chiefs, that say if there is no de-escalation in sight, it's not a matter of if, but...
I hate this guy so much. I mean, pure, transparent, bovine fascist, okay? And he LARPs as it too. He loves that. So one of the things that I'm also noticing that I think is good, you know how we talked about Scott Wiener and the sea change that's taking place? A lot of liberals who also leaned into the Republican insanity over immigration are now turning around and saying like ICE, melt ICE, all this stuff. They're getting more radical by the day, and that's a good thing. But that was another aspect of my back and forth commentary, which is something that I've seen liberals engage in, at least like liberals that are hyper online, who want to talk like they've been here from the start. And I have no problem with that. Once again, if you have realized, if you finally had a wake-up call and you recognize right from wrong, and now you're actually willing to go out and protest, I'm totally on board. I love that. But don't try to punish people who have been there from the start. Don't try to rewrite history. Don't try to act as though we were the dangerous radicals and that we actually played a role in what's taking place here, when in fact the administration, the Democratic Party, played a role in normalizing this kind of violence by refusing to counter message against it. And there was someone who was correctly saying that this would inevitably lead to exactly what's going on, and that person was people like myself. So it is not lost on me that there are a lot of people who are a lot of liberals who are trying to act as though they were here all along. You know what I mean? Will Stansel is personally tracking ICE agents around Minneapolis in his Honda Fit. That boy is just built different. I'm just saying, don't identify why you were wrong initially. Quietly, okay? Quietly. If you don't identify what led you to believe that the Democrats were operating with the best possible agenda in the election cycle, and how that normalized in the eyes of a lot of Americans this kind of violence that was inevitably going to take place, you will fall for it again. Same goes for, supporting the current war, but not the previous ones, supporting all the previous civil rights movements, but not the current one. Okay? You can't do that. So I don't want people to, I don't know. I just don't, I see stuff like this. I don't know who this guy is. I've only seen some of his stuff before, like on me over Israel and whatnot. And I've been finding myself liking people like this and their takes a lot more, right? Because there is this real unification taking place, at least against the Republicans, right? And I said, am I crazy or are you normal now? He said, Hasan, you're normal as being a tanky boot slurp. I have been a liberal this entire time. And I said, okay, I'll give it a few more months before you hate the right as much as I do. Check back soon. And this guy was retweeted by Destiny when he responded to you. Yeah, I don't really care about all that stuff, obviously, because I don't think these guys have ever had a real constituency in the real world. But what I find really strange is, stuff like this. It's incredible how for the last several years, those of us who have tried to build a community of liberal democratic online commentary had to constantly face off commies trying to either subvert what we do or drive us off the internet, more so than any far-right assholes. I said, I don't know any of you at all, but if you spend most of your time left bashing and signaling to the right how moderate you are, it's not strange to assume you like reactionaries. So it's either time to unite or still complain about the left when the left hasn't changed gears. What the fuck did he call you? I'm too old for that one. He just said I'm a tanky. It's it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. He's saying that I just like authoritarian leftist movements or something. I don't know, whatever his worldview is. Now, once again, this is not about oh, you need to be held accountable. You need to be held accountable. I am much more open-minded than many of my counterparts are on the left in terms of welcoming people with open arms when they actually recognize the errors of their past ways, right? But what's actually frustrating is like if you are still talking about the tanky threat when the fascist Gestapo is literally knocking on people's doors, then you're objectively not dialed in to exactly what's going on. Like you don't understand it. You don't understand what you're saying. You're still trying to find this like weird moderation, not realizing that that weird moderation that you're desperately trying to signal is unironically just normalizing the right. Okay? That's it. That's it. Hasan, is it possible for you to conceive that people might dislike the right and also dislike the left? In fact, for very similar reasons. Austin Ox responds, is it possible for you to conceive that conflating open fascism with the people flirting against fascism as being very similar is a dumbass opinion people should mock you for? Name the reasons and let's see. My God, is Hasan so thin-skinned that he's now sending his editors to whine at us? Yeah, I sent my editor. That's what I did. I was like, Austin Ox, please defend me. So what's frustrating about this kind of stuff is if you don't realize like how we got here, like if you don't have the solid fundamentals in your analysis on how we arrived at the current ever-present danger that we're facing as far as America turning into a complete fascist dictatorship, okay? Because it is at our doorstep. We're already in the waters of fascism, but it hasn't turned into like a full authoritarian, I guess, fascist movement. Like the courts are still there to a certain degree. You know, there is still like a little bit of ticker tape holding this entire thing together. Right. But my assessment right now, he made fun of the genocide in Gaza, by the way, as of 5 hours ago. Yeah. My point always is like, you guys have to, at a certain point, you don't have to like say it out loud. Right. But you have to go back and really reconsider what your first principles are and how you arrived at like the wrong conclusions initially until it was slamming you in the face. Yeah, these liberals just see the tide turning, so they're trying to infiltrate these already established movements so they can control it. I know, and it's ironic because they think we are doing that. Like the attitude that I'm seeing from people like this is very strange. Like they make it seem as though like the left is actually trying to take advantage of this tide shift, as though we haven't been at the forefront of this tide shift, especially even against the Democrats at certain points. And that's what's so frustrating about this is like, this is not productive in general. This is an opportunity for you guys to go, hey, you know what? Let's let bygones be bygones. Like, I'm the one who's being nice. I'm not the one who's being vindictive here when I should be vindictive. I should openly treat you as a enemy, right? Ultra leftists are just annoying while the far right is killing people and destroying democratic institutions. Exactly. This has always been my principle. And that's precisely the reason why I have maintained the position that I don't left bash in general. At most, I make jokes about it, whether it be anarchists or, ultras of all different sorts and varieties. But I don't spend a good deal of time on the left or on the people further to my left, or at least in the way that they present themselves, because I understand that they don't necessarily have any power whatsoever. And not only do they not have any power whatsoever, they are directionally moving the conversation in the appropriate direction. So what is this? Hey, Hasan, as a longtime watcher, I'm really disappointed in your Iran protest coverage. I watched your YouTube video and all you did was make fun of a dumb chatter just claiming everyone wants a monarch. No one wants a monarch, even people who are chanting his name. They want a secular democracy, and Reza Pahlavi is the only person right now championing it. Yeah, I don't think the monarch is championing a secular democracy. Let's be real. That sounds a little inconsistent, but we'll get to Iran in a second. Don't worry. I'm going to be talking about Iran extensively today. But there's multiple factions here. We have the Shah, we have MEK, and a lot of outside interests. And then there's also an incredibly diverse country, Iran, that is led by the repressive forces of the Islamic Republic.
You cannot be this stupid. Jesus Christ.
Oh my. This podcast was going well until that.
You just said it's cool. We levels Oklahoma. You're like, yeah, it. There must be a reason. Like, you literally can't be that dumb.
You know what the problem is? Mom and I don't believe he'll ever blow up Oklahoma because we're on his side and so's the whole state.
No, it's because you're in a cult.
You guys are worried and afraid because you live in a state where it might happen.
I think people that my first inclination that this because of how freakish this commentary is that it's rage bait and it's fake, right? And as far as I understand, I mean, I'm going to interview these guys at a later date, okay, to try to get a better assessment on if it's scripted or if it's like exaggerated or not. But I will just say that at least talking to people that I know that do have MAGA parents, conversations such as this one do take place at the dinner table or, during Thanksgiving, like not dissimilar to the one that you are going to hear. Now, first he says, oh, he's not going to bomb Oklahoma, but you guys are afraid because he might bomb California. So he shifts gears. Listen.
Okay, let's theoretically say that does happen. Let's say Trump sends in the Marines to Los Angeles, California. And let's say I'm out going to see a movie on a weekend, and he says, go into that shopping mall.
Under a truck.
Quiet piggy. He says, go into that shopping mall and kill everyone you see. And let's say I get gunned down by the Marines for just being at a mall.
Okay, number one,
All for
let's just take it one
Dad,
step
wait a minute,
further.
Mom, wait 1 second. Wait 1 second. Dad, hang on, Mom. Dad, you just said you are for Donald Trump murdering me for no reason, and you would support that.
If he walks into a mall to people with military,
There has to be a reason.
there's a reason. And I'm all for it. And the people in Los Angeles, California are as deserving of execution as the assholes in New York City. You're all communists.
Chatters with immediate family members that are deeply invested in the MAGA cult can maybe attest to this, but more and more people are saying things like this in the countryside, in the rural areas, in places where Donald Trump has made a lasting impact. And what is really funny is for those of you who don't know this podcast at all, they go, did he just say mom and dad? And the answer is yes. Okay. To which I repeated, I don't think we can live normally in a country where 20% of the population operates like this. We need cult deprogramming. Okay. And if you recall, the last time I talked about this was once again, where liberals got so mad at me for saying that we need some kind of deprogramming and education for people. They said, oh, you want re-education camps. Now I'm seeing more and more people who previously were liberal or liberal adjacent also coming to that reality, coming to that recognition. I'm seeing it more and more often. More and more often, I'm seeing people go, oh, I kind of understand why there is a necessity for some kind of education procedure, because this cult, if left to its own devices, is not exactly tenable with having a nation state. Like, you can't really have a country if 20% of the population straight up thinks like, yeah, no, all the commies deserve it, including my own children. And this is not like, this is something that, this is why college isn't free law. I mean, it's part of it. Yeah, it's part of it for sure. I think a less educated population, I don't even think re-education camps would work for those kinds of people. What do you do with that kind of hog? You just really hammer it over and over again that, this kind of sentiment is completely inconsistent with the shared values that we're supposed to maintain as a nation state. That's all you got to do and hope for the best. You can't save everybody, but that shouldn't stop you from trying to save as many people as possible. But this is once again something that I talk about all the time. This is a byproduct of creating a malleable population because they are not educated, because you paywalled education, because all the K through 12 education is paywalled, or not paywalled necessarily, but the public schooling, the public schooling system is completely in a dire state of disrepair. Okay. There is a massive class disparity in educational attainment and educational outcomes in general. And that creates an environment of servants of empire, not very, an environment where there's a lot of people who are just not very intelligent. And people who are stupid are malleable. They're easy to manipulate. But when it gets to a certain point where you have 20% of the population that is so firmly invested in the MAGA cult, that is at the mercy, at the whims of one madman like Donald Trump, who has time and time again shown that he will do whatever the he wants to do, no matter what the repercussions are. Even if the repercussions of his actions are directly impacting people like that, directly impacting people in the MAGA cult, you have to do something about it. This is me asking because I genuinely don't even know how to begin this process, but assuming nothing else changes about the country other than like an establishment Dem gets elected after Trump, assuming we have elections again, what does deprogramming look like to you? Check logs, please. I can't get into it right now. that's a much longer conversation that could take place at a later date. But the reason why I brought that up is because someone asked. The reason why I brought that up is because someone asked, like, why can't we find moderation? And the question I have is, if 20% of the country, right, just 20%, I'm not saying 20% of the country thinks this way and is basically at the mercy of a complete madman, right? With cult-like zealotry that they demonstrate over and over again. And then the other 20% on top of that is basically like agnostic to it, where they're like, I don't really care as long as my taxes are, as long as I feel like the country is moving in a positive direction under the watchful eye of this Republican movement, and I don't really care that much about immigrants or whatever. How do you find moderation? How do you find the golden mean with those guys? Okay? How do you do that? I don't think it's possible. And I think a lot of liberals end up coming to the conversation with this honest naivete, with this honest assessment where they think, no, like there has to be some kind of back and forth here where we can just find a reasonable middle ground. As the middle ground shifts further and further right from under their legs every single day, someone needs to pull at least the middle ground back to the actual center. And that's never going to happen unless you have more overt, openly leftist people in positions of prominence actively speaking about this shit. Okay? That's it. It's not going to happen, which is part of the reason why I never, I as a policy refuse to actively left bash, even though many people to my left, if there is really someone to my left, let's be real, I don't personally think so, but people with like ideological differences or ideological delineations that claim to be further left than myself will yell at me, but I usually do not return the favor. And the reason why I don't do that is because I think they play an important role in pulling the broader consciousness back to a place of reason, a place of common sense.
When this happens again.
Well, we've already said that, Nicole. The de-escalation and a lot of those police chiefs that you mentioned don't...
Breaking news, communists not more left than Hasanabi? Yes.
Seem to de-escalate. They seem to escalate.
Are you de-escalating?
Absolutely. Every day we de-escalate.
We watched as you confronted protesters right there. It didn't look like de-escalation, but are you trying to send a message?
The agitators and the rioters here in Minneapolis need to understand that our operations will continue unabated despite the violence they perpetrate against law enforcement.
Trump administration officials have claimed
the violence of the snow and the icy roads against our big, beautiful hog army. Just the fattest Gestapo that you have ever seen.
Renee Good intended to ram ICE agent Jonathan Ross with her car before he shot and killed her last week.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad.
Video taken by the agent on his phone during the incident shows the moment he fired at Good's car, capturing this expletive seconds later. Appearing on CNN, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem insisted the deadly use of force was appropriate.
He had to take quick action based on his training to defend himself and his colleagues around him.
Once he's out of harm's way.
That's very clear and factual from the videos that you can see.
Minnesota Senator Tina Smith questioned that claim.
I mean, the guy is holding a camera, is holding his phone with one hand taking video.
These guys are way outnumbered. They need National Guard support. The terrorists cannot. I want to reiterate something here that a lot of people do not understand, and I briefly talked about this with Mustafa the Poet when I was live with them as well. People see black people from the African continent ethnically and assume that they're migrants, okay? Somali Americans, by and large, are American citizens, okay? 90% of them are American citizens. 60% of them are American-born U.S. citizens. Okay, so when you see like a crowd of Somali people, if you're a racist piece of shit, or maybe even if you're not like a Republican, but I understand like why people look at the Somali population on U.S. soil and it just automatically assume that they're immigrants. Like you're wrong. I'm just explaining this to you. They are no different. They are no different than like an Irish American or a German American. Like they've been here. Many of them second generation. Like I said, 60% of them are natural born U.S. citizens. Okay. So when a lot of Republicans look at this kind of stuff, they think, oh, this is unacceptable. You look at this, a bunch of criminal immigrants like surrounding a police officer. Like, that's not the case. This is no different than a crowd of white people doing this. Okay. And the reason why I consistently stress the importance of this is because if an ethnic group of people on U.S. soil are 90% American citizens, why the is ICE there? Why is ICE there? I mean, why is ICE anywhere, really? It's the same reason. But this is one of those instances where you look at a group of minorities and automatically assume, because of the way that they look, that they are not American citizens at all. And therefore, Department of Homeland Security apprehensions and ICE traffic stops are perfectly justifiable. It's not. It's ridiculous. Okay? So, your crooked con monologue in counter messaging is gaining traction again?
Republicans, they act as though there is an election every single day. They are constantly on message. They're constantly creating an alternative reality with lies, saying that undocumented migrants are actually responsible for a metric ton of the crimes that are taking place in American cities, when that is an abject lie, okay? And when I talk to congresspersons, whether it be at the DNC or even before, even after, and I tell them, why the aren't you guys counter messaging against this? We are a nation of immigrants. America is the most diverse nation on the planet. It is literally the reason why we are such a domineering force beyond all these other, beyond all the other, violent reasons. But like that is one of the most redeemable aspects of America that I personally love, that the Democrats completely dropped because they were scared. They saw that one poll from the Pew Center of Research that said that 66% of Americans want mass deportations. That exact same poll also showed that if given two options, mass deportation and mass amnesty, that the majority always chose mass amnesty. So why is that never communicated? Because Americans, sure, the median voter, trying to understand where the median voter is coming from is impossible, okay? You will kill yourself if you try to understand what these people are thinking.
You just lost me, Hasan. I was with you halfway through that, but you lost me. But I'm with you.
But what I'm trying to say is this, okay? There are Trump supporters out there, okay, that have been deluded into thinking that Donald Trump represented a change. And obviously, we saw that buyer's remorse this past Tuesday, right? Especially in Hispanic communities where they were like, oh, I can't believe that he is actually doing mass deportation. And it's we're in D.C., this is a fairly liberal crowd, and we laugh at those people. But like, I talk to those people every day, and there were people that genuinely believed that Donald Trump was actually excising the violent criminals. And the only reason why people are led to believe this lie, aside from the faucet of misinformation that comes from independent outlets on the right and also Fox News as well, is because there is no robust response from the Democratic Party that says that's a lie. That's a lie. Undocumented migrants in this country are responsible for a lower rate of per capita crime than natural-born U.S. citizens are. If you pair that up with documented migrants, it's negligible.
Hasan, if Renee Good had been non-white, the response on the left would have been even stronger. What? That clearly makes them racist, or at least biased to one race. If you disagree, you have to provide an argument. What? Are you all right, dude? Why do you do this every day? Confused woke of the day? No, this is a derailer. He just like comes in here and does this shit. Here, take an hour off. There have been tens of thousands of people like protesting in the streets in the aftermath of Renee Good's execution. So he's just trying to derail and say that like the left is actually anti-white racist. But in order to make this reactionary counter argument, you have to obviously deny the reality in front of your eyes and make it seem as though there hasn't been this like robust response and mass mobilization that has taken place in the aftermath of Renee Good's assassination.
It is marginal, and they're hyper-focusing on it specifically because this is a vulnerable population that is easy to target and it's easy to ridicule, and there is not enough of a robust defense mechanism out there. And that's the reason why people end up believing this bullshit, and then they get shocked when it's actually implemented. Republicans...
Yep. I'm going to repost it again. So, I mean, this is not the first, nor will it be the last time I address this, and I will continue addressing it over and over again. And when people say, Hasan, why do you keep repeating yourself, or why do you keep debating people over and over again on stuff like this? It's because I still believe that every single time I have this kind of conversation, there are new people that listen and new people that go, you know what, this guy is making sense, especially when attitudes change, right? Or when people start seeing the impact of things that they thought were going to be good for the country, and then they realize maybe it's not good for the country at all. Okay. Sometimes it also helps movement veterans to hear the arguments again too. Yes. Bring the same derailers into this town hall, but ignores the vast majority of clarifying questions for folks that honestly want nuanced comparisons and explanations. Wait, what is that? Where are you getting your statistics for the 90%, 60% Somalian citizenship demographics in Minnesota? You've been saying this for the last week or so, yet you've never ever discussed where you get those numbers from. Not saying you're lying. However, I think you owe us at least a source. So 2 things. Number 1, if you actually want to see the sources that I'm pulling from Top Dome here, you can watch my YouTube videos in the aftermath, because my editors will literally go and put the direct sourcing. Because in my mind, I'm just, I'm rattling details off the top of my head in real time. Having said that, however, you can also Google it personally if you've been asking about this for like the last 3 days, right? John, why don't you ever provide source for the 90% and 60% stats that you're talking about in Somalis in Minnesota getting that information from ... You had 3 whole days where you could have Googled what percentage of Somalis are U.S. citizens. Let's Google it. Somalis are naturalized citizens or permanent residents, with figures 92 or even 83. Here's from the Minnesota Reformer. Most Somali people in America and Minnesota are citizens. The percentage of Minnesotans with Somali ancestry who are not citizens dropped from 76% in 2001 to 9% in 2023, and as estimated by American Community Survey. Was it that difficult for you to take 3 whole days of asking this question? Not even 3. You asked about this before. You asked about this on 1/7. Where are you getting the demographic stats for American Somalian population in Minneapolis? That would not be census data, 90%, 60%. Where does this even come from? So the question I have for you is, it has been 5 days since you last asked that question. In 5 days, you could not have actually Googled it one time. That's actually helpful. I didn't know that. Okay, but what should be helpful for you is not necessarily just like the sourcing behind this information, but also you should, in the future, if you have an issue with the information that I'm presenting, okay, you can just Google it on your own. And if I'm wrong about something, if I'm wrong on the numbers, you can come in and say, hey, I actually Googled the information that you were presenting, and I feel like there's something that's a little bit inconsistent there. Could you perhaps please address this? And then link it. Okay? Instead of just coming in here for 5 days in a row being like, where are you getting this information from? I think you could have just Googled it, right? I'm not your personal ChatGPT bot. To be fair, you don't source stuff on stream enough. People generally don't know how to do research for obvious reasons, lack of higher education. Yeah, because I'm offering real-time commentary and analysis. I could fake it as though I'm encountering this information for the first time ever and go, let's Google this, or let's research this together. Or I could just continue giving you this information and move on. Of course, there's a reason why people apply this level of like hyper scrutiny to my commentary, because there's a bunch of dumbasses who have spent, the last 5 to 6 years consistently saying that I'm actually misinforming people instead of actually presenting any evidence of the sort. And that kind of sentiment is stuck. But my sources are readily available on the YouTube VODs. Okay? I refuse to believe you need a higher education to be able to research. It should be common sense to ask about biases when Googling stuff. I mean, it is something that people are taught, and I don't think a lot of people have been taught this basic shit.
Down with deportation!
This is outside of what I would normally do. I don't really have any connections to the...
Wait, what do you mean? I've always wondered if you have sources in front of you or is it off the dome? No, it's off the dome. It's off the dome. I read quite a bit, and everything that I'm presenting to you is off the dome. Sometimes I can actually get like a percentage or a number wrong because of this reason. But because this is a, 8-hour process, yes, I'm like rattling off facts from the top of my mind when I'm presenting you with an argument. I know that for a lot of people, however, this is strange because unfortunately for a lot of people that get their information from content creators online, the content creator is seemingly first encountering this perspective, or at least they have a biased framework that they're operating off of, and then they go and try to find facts that justify their worldview or justify their perspective in real time. And a lot of people will look at that and go, that's brilliant. He's doing research. He's doing research in real time. But I have already arrived at these conclusions off of doing the research for many, many years before I even decided to stream on Twitch. And that's precisely the reason why when I'm rattling off information off of the top of my mind, off of research that I've conducted for years at this point, okay, you can immediately go and check and see that that is credible. The argument that I'm presenting is built on facts. Anyway, let's continue. What Trump is doing is psychotic. Protests held in North Carolina after the ICE shooting.
Democrats are the left, but what Trump is doing is psychotic. Because killing people in the streets in intimidation tactics is horrifying, and we can't allow it. We have to stand up.
The assumption is that this Justice Department is going to whitewash that case.
Okay, but are there no merits to reading Wikipedia during a debate? Why read beforehand? That's funny. You used to say you never read inconsistent much. First you say you don't read, now you say you do read. How can I believe you on anything? This chatter is joking, but like I did realize that all of my memeing about how I don't read and how I'm illiterate has unironically caused people to legitimately believe that. Just like whenever I say I'm stupid over and over again, which is something that I do believe because everyone is stupid. It's impossible to know everything. I constantly have to deal with the fact that there's so much knowledge out there that's not in my mind on any issue and so many different perspectives as well. Having said that, however, the average person reads that, the average person hears that and goes, oh, this guy's not supposed to be taken seriously. He's a moron, especially if they're biased towards the worldview that I'm presenting, biased against it, you know? How are you liking the Philip Short Mao biography? It's pretty good. It's not as dense. I mean, he has he writes in a way that is so easy to decipher, is so easy to understand, and I recommend it. It's very good. Obviously, he's not like, I wouldn't say he's like pro Mao or anything like that. It's not like it's not like that at all. But I think it's the closeness that he has to the information, and being a Western journalist, a Western reporter in the region for a very long time, has given him tremendous insight and shows a very different perspective than one that you would normally encounter in the Western world. That's like automatically treating Mao as like Adolf Hitler, Chinese Adolf Hitler or some shit. He doesn't do that, and it's very good. It's on my list right now, trying to go through Ezra Vogel's 930-page behemoth that is Deng Xiaoping and the Transformation of China. Watch Cover Up on Netflix about Seymour Hersh. I already did. It's awesome. I love Cy Hersh. Obviously, that's my goat.
Absolve an officer.
Please briefly talk about Pol Pot. I need good counterpoints. The f*** do you mean? Are you asking me to give you talking points to defend Pol Pot? What are you, insane? Chatter. First of all, this is not a good way to seek out information, okay? Yeah. The communists that the U.S. liked, I know. Well, not just the U.S., let's be real. The communists that China liked as well.
Sort of poor conduct at worst, at best.
What can protests like this do to...
I hope get people concerned. I hope get our legislators to grow what are called cojones, some guts, to assert their legitimate power under the Constitution.
If you look at their policy against both Americans and their international policies, they follow the exact tenets and playbook of all fascist governments that we have seen in the 20th century.
It's just like it is truly remarkable to have like such dedicated anti-fascists who also happen to be liberal. It is genuinely contradictory. I'm serious. Because, like, historically speaking, liberals have capitulated to fascist movements both in Europe and in general. But, like, America is the one place where you can both be an anti-fascist and also an anti-communist at the same time. I guess America and Poland, maybe. But they don't even recognize, like, the contradictions there at all. And I think part of that is because they are the most propagandized people. We are, as Americans, the most propagandized people on the planet. So propagandized that we don't even understand. We don't even understand that we are being propagandized against. Like, we just don't even recognize it. What is the contradiction? If you are anti-fascist, being anti-communist is idiotic. Presenting Donald Trump as though he is like some sort of communist is the most insane thing you can say, because communists have historically, if you have any understanding of history whatsoever, communists are the first group that fascists will seek to eliminate. Organized communists, organized socialists, trade unionists, and the like are the first group that will always be eradicated by organized fascist movements. And that is because communists are always anarchists, socialists, anti-capitalists alike have always been the vanguard against fascism. They are the most militant against fascist movements. So when liberals actually present this utterly ahistoric assessment because of their understanding of Stalin or their understanding of communism, which is, again, chock full of propaganda and totally inconsistent, because they just go, well, these are all authoritarian. We're just against authoritarianism of every sort or whatever, except if it's authoritarianism that we have installed, an authoritarian dictatorship that we have installed, in which case we just won't really think about it. These are boomers, so I suspect they're using the symbol to mean Russia, not communism. You see a lot of hammer and sickle Trump stuff among lib boomers. They just see it as Russia. No, I know. Iran proves you wrong? What do you mean, bro? You're so delusional. Iran proves you wrong? What? Do you think the Islamic Republic is a communist movement? Was the Iran is the most anti-capitalist? Yeah, no, you're right, man. Yeah, they were. You know what it was actually? When the Ayatollah was ripping every like revolutionary, socialist, communist in the country, throwing them en masse in jail, in prison. As a matter of fact, using them as like the number one ops, far more consistently, far more like a far larger threat to the established order in Iran. He was actually doing that as leftist infighting when Iran was purging the left mobilization that played a formative role in the Iranian revolution. Okay, what they were actually doing was leftist infighting, where they were like, we're trying to do Islamo-communism. We're trying to do Islamo-communism the right way, and all these other Soviet-aligned movements in the country are actually doing it the wrong way, and that's why they were throwing them in prison and purging them. Guy who doesn't understand anything. And unfortunately, this is like the overwhelming majority of people. Whenever we talk about Iran, bro, he doesn't realize you're making fun of him. Yes, because he thinks being anti-imperialist or being anti-West as a understandable position for sovereignty in a country that is designed as an adversary towards the West is automatically that you're a leftist. Like you are a leftist across the board. You're ideologically a leftist. No, man, that's just for survival, okay? And as I've reiterated over and over again, especially in terms of Iran or even with Hamas, from my perspective, when a country is being utterly dominated by Western forces, okay, and is in the death throes, actively trying to keep everything together in a very diverse country that is a powder keg, okay? it does not matter what their ideological predisposition is. Like that's the reason why leftists used to say critical support to insert whatever country you're talking about. Trying to learn the correct positions on the USSR and China makes me feel like a conspiracy theorist. Okay, that's fine. How do you rationalize nuclear proliferation and the idea that inevitably as an irrational actor will have nukes? Can you use global destruction? I agree that all nation states should be able to acquire nukes. You want to know something? I mean, I've talked about this quite a bit as far as like countries that want to develop sovereignty, especially if they're not under the nuclear umbrella, the nuclear security umbrella of the United States of America. Have to develop nuclear arms, right? Like have to develop nuclear arms and have to have a robust military to be able to defend themselves and said nuclear arms as well. Now, that is a consistent take that I've had. I also will say that like, obviously, I mean, I guess we're going to get into Iran in a little bit. Hold on. Let me see how many more videos there are. Cause I want to watch the Kristi Noem thing first. And then get into the Iran situation.
You will pet me, whether you like it or not.